Welcome to Brave Healer Productions. It's time to experience what's possible. So, what if there's something you haven't learned yet that could change everything? Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions Publishing, where we are helping the world experience what's possible. And here today to help me with that mission is the author of one of our newest books. It's called Clear Trauma Now, a powerful solution for getting unstuck. Welcome, Judith Swack. How's it going?
Hey, Laura, excited to be here.
I can't wait to get into this conversation. Let me tell you a little bit about Judith, you guys. Judith Swack, Ph.D., is a biochemist, immunologist, master NLP practitioner, mind body healer, and best-selling author. She is the originator of Healing from the Body Level Up, HBLU, an innovative and powerful methodology for transformative results. And you guys can find her at hblu.org. I've got the link down below for you. We're going to get into this, Judith. I want you to tell everyone a little bit of the why behind this whole topic for you.
Well, I really feel that my soul mission is to help people alleviate unnecessary suffering. And so I've come up with a method that really gets people unstuck very quickly and pretty painlessly so that they can get on with their lives and create the kind of experience they want to have in human form and this planet in the here and now. So basically, I've developed, because I'm a scientist, I developed a reproducible method to clear unconscious self-sabotage at the unconscious level, the body level, and the soul level simultaneously. Because we are multi-level beings. You know, we have a conscious mind, which is our rational mind. We have our unconscious mind, which is the land of emotion and imagination and learning and memory and creativity, and then we have bodies that want to survive and feel good and have pleasure and you know and live a long time, right? Bodies and the soul is housed in this body because it wants to do a soul mission. It wants to experience this type of life, and it wants to make a contribution so that the world is better for you having been here. So this is an experience for your soul. You need to coordinate the soul with the body, with the unconscious mind, with the conscious mind. It is a lifelong juggling act, I'm telling you, to get all these levels to work together in alignment. And if something isn't working in your life, there is going to be something interfering. And I have basically spent 4 decades mapping the interference patterns and coming up with protocols and collecting techniques that dissolve the stuck energy in minutes. So there you go.
Okay, so there's a line, I believe it's in your back cover copy. You're saying something like, hey, you guys, if you don't know about this, there's probably a reason. And I can't remember the exact words of it, but talk to me about that. Why don't we have this in our hands already?
Well, it's because anytime anybody comes up with something new and better, it gets met with resistance and hostility. Whether it's a healing method, whether it's a new way of doing education, whether it's a new medication, whether it's a new way of doing law, whether it's a new way of doing business. Anytime you come up with something new and better that's really revolutionary, you get hit with resistance by the powers that be, and then they try to repress it and they fight you on it until about, I don't know, 40 to 60 years later, it gets adopted. And then suddenly everybody thinks, I don't know why anybody resisted this because this is obviously very good. It's bizarre.
It is a
So
little
I'm
bizarre.
about 100 at this point. I'm about 100 years ahead of my time. When I started, I was about 200 years ahead of my time. But I'm happy to say that energy psychology and the tapping techniques, and a lot of people have heard of tapping, have made a lot of inroads into the collective unconscious. And there are a lot of books and research done on tapping. And my work uses tapping, but it expands it into many areas of life. But my book is about using tapping techniques to clear trauma. But the key to clearing trauma is to understand its structure. So my original research is the structure of trauma, and trauma contains several negative emotions, some limiting beliefs that go with it, and anticipatory phobias. It has a structure. And if you don't know what the structure is, you can throw tapping at it, but you won't really clear it. So if you combine the knowledge with structure, with a tapping technique, then you can clear all kinds of trauma. And my book talks about really surprising types of trauma that you wouldn't even think of. For example, I can heal people of brain damage and reverse learning disabilities in like 1 to 3 sessions. And one of the strangest forms of brain damage is high fevers in childhood. And people don't even remember that. They were sick and they were 4 years old, and okay, they got over it, but they had a learning disability after that.
Mm.
Or I actually saw somebody have brain damage, a couple people from detoxing. Seriously? I mean, it's obvious if you're an alcoholic and you're poisoning your brain with alcohol that you could have physical injury trauma from that. But detoxing? Really?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
people get into their detoxing pretty intensely. All right, we're going to continue to talk about that because, funny enough, I actually have a really specific question along those lines for you. I want you all to just have a peek at our beautiful book cover. So I'm going to share it there with you for us a moment. Clear trauma now, a powerful solution for getting unstuck. I'm an anatomy geek, Judith. So like this anatomy on the front is just turning me on. I love it.
Ah. Well,
So
really, it's
yeah,
supposed to demonstrate the mind-body connection and how they're actually inseparable. And my methodology is called healing from the body level up. So we actually start by getting information from the body using muscle testing, which is like lie detector testing. And people are familiar with lie detector testing as a way of putting sensors on the body and measuring the body's autonomic signals when they're saying a true statement or a false statement. And so the body will answer you. If your body answers you, you can actually talk to your unconscious mind and your soul directly by reading out the answers from the body. So it's the best way I know to actually talk to your inner levels consciously.
listen, you have missing links. I am a tapping fan and I have been for a long time. So when I really got the gist of what you were doing here, putting the structure with that technique, plus some other things you haven't even talked about yet, you guys aren't going to believe what you're getting in this book. Good for both laymen who are trying to self-treat and practitioners looking for probably one of the most powerful modalities that exists on the planet. Seriously, I'm in love with this. Um, so I hope y'all are excited. We can't wait for you to grab your copy of this book. But listen, one of my biggest ahas was actually something you just started to touch on a minute ago. It's about the kind of traumas that can stick with us that are maybe more subtle things that we don't even realize are limiting us. Now, you used a pretty intense example of a brain damage. I wasn't even going there when I was thinking about this question. But what do you want people to know? What else do you want them to know about some of those things so that they can have some awareness of why this can help?
Well, I think that, first of all, you need to recognize you're traumatized. And as I said, I gave some examples where people don't even know they are traumatized because it's not like, oh, 9/11, clearly trauma. So I talk about, for example, in high school, you know, somebody's dating somebody, they're in love, it's their first love, and they break up because what, they're kids and it's not really going to go anywhere. But the breakup is very painful because they're tenderhearted at that age. And so you break up with somebody and they imprint a loss trauma. And now they have an anticipatory fear of engaging in another relationship for fear that they'll be rejected again. And how many people have terrible fear of rejection? And where do you think that comes from? Because they experienced a rejection, but they didn't think of it as, oh, a rejection. And so it then colors all their relationships and the pathways to their relationships after that. So let's say some teenage boy breaks up with his girlfriend or vice versa, and he's brokenhearted. Does he tell his mother? Does he tell his father? Do they send him for therapy? Does he do tapping? No, he carries it. And then, of course, there's diagnosis shock. You go to the doctor because you think there's something wrong with you, or you don't think there's something wrong with you, but it's a checkup and they find out there's something wrong with you. And then they tell you that there's something wrong with you. And of course, your internal reaction is, oh no. But you're sitting there and talking to the doctor, and your conscious mind's repressing that, and you think that you're fine, and you're not fine. So, one of the most interesting experiences I had was with a friend of my mother's who went to get a mammogram, and they sent her a postcard telling her there was something wrong with the mammogram. She needed to have it redone. So she instantly thought, oh no, I have breast cancer, I'm going to die. And she went into such a panic that she wouldn't leave her home. And the redo of the mammogram was scheduled for a month. A month later, she didn't leave the house for a month until she went for the mammogram, which they found out was fine. So here, her imagination reacted, made up a story that she reacted to as if it were true, and then it owned her behavior and her reactions. So what happens is when you get bad news or you think you're getting bad news, your unconscious mind makes up a worst case scenario story because your fight or flight reflex is trying to create survival. So it tries to make up worst case scenarios to be prepared. And it has such emotion in it that you believe it, and then it runs your behavior. So the really bottom line message is that emotion runs behavior, and that people imprint emotional reaction to things that get stuck in their body and then runs their behavior. So people have all kinds of beliefs and reactions to things that they can't consciously control. And even if they know it's not true consciously, it doesn't change the fact that the energy of the belief runs the behavior. And I have a whole chapter of the mechanism, how feeling and belief runs behavior regardless of conscious knowledge.
Okay, you've used the word imprint twice, and I'm going to rewind you a little bit. And I'm assuming that in this explanation you've been making the last couple of minutes, you're actually telling us what imprinting means. But I wonder if you could give me like the most basic idea for people who are just hearing, you said they imprinted a loss trauma when
Mm-hmm.
you talked about it a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit more about what that is. What does that mean to have something like that imprinted?
Well, it's a reflex. So you've heard of the fight or flight reflex, and you've heard of Pavlovian conditioning. So Pavlov decided to check if you could train a reflex. Now that just sounds ridiculous because a reflex by definition is something automatic. How do you train a reflex? It's an automatic, when you go to the doctor and he taps your knee, it jerks. You can't stop it from jerking. It's a reflex. So he decided to train the salivation reflex. So he got some dogs and he literally rubber banded some tubes into their mouths to collect saliva. And he showed them some food and they dripped saliva into the tubes and he measured that. And then he rang a bell and then he put some food down and he measured the saliva drip, and then he took away the food and rang the bell, and they salivated just as much to the sound of the bell as they did the food. And you could say at the conscious level, listen, you stupid dog, there's no food here. Why are you salivating? Stop that right now. But what happened was the food reflex got associated with the bell and imprinted as bell equals food. So anytime somebody has a traumatic reaction, which is a reflex, because fight or flight is a reflex, anything that was in the environment at the time can trigger a flashback to the original reflex, which stays stuck in your nervous system unless you take it out intentionally by using tapping or some body-oriented technique that erases it at the physiological nervous system level.
Thank you for
And
that.
and I'll tell you, I've seen very strange things. I've seen people be allergic to sunlight. What
Wow.
happened? They got sunburned. And now, if they feel a little bit of heat on their skin, it triggers the body memory. Oh no, sunburn. And they'll even break out in blisters, even though they got just a little bit of sun on them, because the body recreates the reaction.
So I was thinking about you over the weekend and thinking about the book quite a bit. Maybe your ears were burning as I was talking about you, because one of the things I love the most about your book is that you went ahead and you put some personal stories in there, some losses of your own, some things you'd experienced, and it just made everything more real for me. And over the weekend, my daughter moved out of the home for good. She got her first real apartment and out she
Oh,
went. And I thought about you. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. I need to go back to Judith's book and see what I need to do this weekend about right. Cause the sooner the better. That's my
yes,
question. Yeah. Tell me
yes,
more about like if you know, then what?
yes. If you
Mm.
know you've been traumatized, then you treat it as soon as possible because you don't want it to run you unconsciously. So if you recognize that you feel traumatized, you need to treat it right then. In fact, on the diagnosis shock chapter, I talk about how doctors, when they give people bad news, should have people tap in a certain way while they're talking to them so that they don't imprint a traumatic reaction. And so the simple technique is to just hug yourself, resting your fingers on your biceps, and then you tap alternating on your biceps. And that tapping activates your calming reflex and prevents the fight or flight reaction from firing off.
Judith, if I know it's happening in the moment, we're in the middle of it, then that's a good technique right then.
Right then.
Yeah.
hmm You know, I had to have um, some crowns put in on my teeth. And in order to do that, they put this gel, this goo, in a frame and they stick it in your mouth and it's too big and you're gagging and you have to leave it there for 3 minutes while the gel sets. And I noticed that my solar plexus starting to tighten up and my gag reflex was starting to activate after only a half a minute. And if I gagged and spit it out, then they'd have to do it all over again. So I decided to do some tapping because my body was having a reaction to being suffocated, even though it wasn't being suffocated, but the body, anything you put down your throat that interferes with breathing, the body interprets as suffocation. And of course, bodies object to suffocation because it leads to death, and they just hate that thing. They hate death. So, all right, so my solar plexus was tightening up. I felt my gag reflex going. So I started tapping on myself and I checked to see what point would work. So I tapped under the collarbone. And as I tapped under the collarbone, my stomach relaxed, my solar plexus relaxed, my diaphragm relaxed, and my gag reflex relaxed. So I thought, well, let's experiment with this. I'm tapping right now. Did that erase the reaction? No, because when I took my hand away while the goo was still in my mouth, I started to tighten up again. So I tapped the entire 3 minutes until the timer went off and my body stayed comfortable and I didn't have to gag or spit it out. And they took the mold off and it was perfect. Great, done.
Wow. I
Right. And
hope
also,
every dentist or if people start to understand what they can incorporate very, very easily in their offices, they will have way less problems, won't they?
yes, you
Yeah.
know, so doctor trauma. So I took my daughter for pediatrician um, visits, and of course she had to have some shots. And nobody likes shots, and kids particularly fear shots. So I would tap her before she got a shot. Do a whole, Laura, you're going to get a shot, and it's a vaccination for thus and such and we're going to do some tapping right now. So it's going to be quick and it's not going to really hurt. And then you're going to be healthy. We did some tapping. Then the nurse, so they put a nurse in charge of the injections so that kids don't imprint fear for the doctor. They only, they've got like the one villain is the shot nurse. So they're afraid of the shot nurse, but not the doctor. So the shot nurse comes in, and Laura's like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And she's like 18 months old. She's playing with the stethoscope and whatever. And so the nurse gives her a shot, and Laura cries a little bit. We do another round of tapping, and then Laura gets interested in the nurse's stethoscope and asks her to pick her up, and she holds her arms out to her, and so on and so forth. So it was a wonderful experience. So we go out to pay the copay, and the receptionist said, "I don't think you got a shot. I think you're trying to sneak out without getting a shot because this kid is so happy. I don't believe she actually got a shot." So she actually called the shot nurse out, who actually confirmed that Laura had gotten a shot.
That's amazing. I
Right.
love it. And you guys, I just remembered as you were telling this story that Judith's daughter's name is also Laura. So she's
Yeah.
actually talking about her daughter, not me.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, there's so many applications, and the thing that I also love about the book is you give us tons of examples, and I recognized myself, I recognized my family members, I recognized friends. Basically everyone on the planet is going to get some benefit in there with the scenarios you're helping us understand can be treated. And wow, who knows what's possible on the other side of that freedom, mind, body, soul.
And I've actually saved lives, literally saved lives with this technique. Like literally prevented somebody from dying in the moment.
Hmm.
And I've actually treated people who were having allergic reactions and stopped the allergic reaction right there in that moment. But I also do a surgery preparation protocol. So if you're going to have surgery or chemotherapy or any type of invasive diagnostic tests or any type of invasive treatment, you actually prepare the body to receive it without traumatizing. And then I find that people heal up exactly twice as fast as expected. So, for example, I had a teenage boy who was a football player. He got tackled and he broke his femur like completely. And they told him to be in the cast for 12 weeks. It was so bad. And it's 6 weeks. So his mother got him in within a week. We treated him for the accident. We did a lot of tapping. We followed the trauma structure, cleared the trauma memory of the tackle out of his body and out of his bones. And at 6 weeks, they took the cast off to recast him and they did an x ray and he was healed and they didn't need to put the cast on again. So I have data, I have actual data that people healed physically from clearing trauma out of their bodies as
Yeah,
soon as
that's
possible.
phenomenal. Phenomenal. All right. Um, you have a lot going on aside from this beautiful book. Tell us how people work with you and all the things going on in your world.
All right. Well, obviously, I want to train more people to do this, and I do trainings twice a year. Healing from the Body Level Up Module 1 teaches you how to treat trauma. It also teaches you how to clear PTSD in 1 to 6 sessions. But that's more of a complex structure. So I don't really go into detail in the book about doing that. I don't have a protocol in the book for doing that, but in my Module 1 training, I teach people how to treat PTSD and eliminate the PTSD symptoms. How about that? I also, in my Module 1 training, treat people how to treat brain injury. Who can do that? Who do you know who can do that? So it's very powerful. Also, how to set energetic boundaries, right? Because boundaries are not an intellectual thing, they're an energetic thing. So that's my Module 1 training. And then I have 6 levels of training because after trauma, I can treat personality structure. We upgrade the ego structure using the Enneagram model of personality. So the compulsions in the ego structure we can treat. And then the higher modules get into more system patterns, dysfunctional family system patterns, cultural and religious brainwashing patterns. Woo, right? But most everybody comes in, they start with trauma. And trauma is probably the most common experience that F's people up
Yeah, no doubt.
and
Uh,
has to be cleared at the body level.
okay, you guys. Well, I'm going to direct you in just a minute, but a like to wrap up with this one last thing. If you had to leave us with the most important thing you want people to know about healing trauma, what would it be today?
It would be learn tapping. And then anytime you get upset, use tapping on it right then. And it may be caused by trauma, it may be caused by a dysfunctional family system pattern, but if you use the tapping and it's caused by trauma, it'll reduce, it'll clear. If it's caused by a larger pattern, well then you need to come and see me or one of my trained colleagues to take care of the larger patterns. But again, life happens. And even small things can traumatize you. You need to pay attention. Sometimes I recommend that you tap first thing in the morning and then tap before you go to bed for people who are in stressful professions. So, for example, I had a music teacher who would have to travel to 5 different elementary schools, in a week. So she didn't really have a room. She had to carry her stuff. And the kids weren't paying attention, and she was very aggravated and felt very stressed. I said, look, you hate your job, you hate this thing, but you need the money and you can't get another job right now, and you've committed for the year. So just tap yourself in the morning on what you dread you're going to have to deal with today in school. And then when you come home, is before you leave, sit in the car and tap out whatever aggravation you accumulated during the day and come home so that you leave work at work and home at home. Now, I thought she was going to have to do this for the rest of the semester, but it turns out that she only did it for 3 weeks in a row. And after she did it for 3 weeks, she loved her job. She couldn't wait to go there. She had a completely different experience of it. And I thought that's amazing. And I do that with nurses. Nurses burn out. So treat yourself for what you expect you're going to deal with during the day in the morning before you go to work or in the afternoon or the evening shift, whatever. And then treat yourself at the end of the day before you drive home. So you leave work at work and home at home, and you don't carry the stress in your body. So really do not accumulate stress in the body. It's bad for your nervous system. It's bad for your health. And so, read the book, learn what trauma is, pay attention. If you even suspect you have a teeny little trauma, treat it, because even teeny little traumas build up in the nervous system. Don't build up. Don't let it build up. Just stay clean and flow really well.
I love it. I'm going to start tapping immediately on my past weekend.
Okay.
Judith, thank you so much for what you do in the world and for being here today to share it with everyone. You guys, this is more than a book. Judith is an amazing expert practitioner, master practitioner with a community of practitioners who've trained under her. Make sure to visit the website in the show notes down below. Explore all the opportunities she's talking about today. Get the support that you need, right? If you're at that stage. And of course, if you're a practitioner looking to get this training, you're going to find all of the information about that as well on Judith's website. And just to remind you guys, hblu.org. Okay. We hope you hop over to Amazon today and grab your copy of this amazing book. I've got the link down below as well. And lastly, everyone, remember your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you, Laura.